of what we have learned from the garmenting perspective. So for that, we are releasing a white paper which is called "The Missing Stitch in India's Garment Export Story," and we are looking to release it over here. So for that, we have an esteemed list of guests over here. So I would request Mr. P. Senthil Kumar also on the stage. He's a senior partner at the Vector Consulting Group. And if we could have the books, we can have the revealing. Yeah. I would also request Mr. D.R. Karthikeyan, associate partner at Vector. उनको भी दे दिया ना? Yeah, please, if you can. Thank you, gentlemen. I would request Mr. P. Senthil Kumar to take over the stage now.
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be part of Bharat Text 2026, one of the largest platforms showcasing the innovation, strength, and global aspiration of Indian textile and garmenting industry. A very warm welcome to every one of you to my presentation, The Missing Stitch. Hemant? Yeah. I would like to share our perspective, which is actually built on 2 decades of work experience in this domain, followed by a very extensive research on what Indian textile and garmenting companies needs to do to unlock the hidden potential, thereby strengthening their position in global marketplace. If you look at India, it's known for textile production. We are the second largest producer of fabrics in India. Whereas if you look at apparel exports, the share that we enjoy is not that great. It's much, much smaller as compared to the neighbor countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and China. The next question is why? Why is this? India, if you look at, we export fabrics to the neighboring countries, which I just now spoke about. They, in turn, converts these fabrics into garments and exports to US, Europe, and Asian markets. So the question is, and what is that extent that we are talking about here? It's 35 to 40% of the fabric goes outside India, gets converted, and then they supply it to the brands. If you really look at, this is the potential where we actually lose in terms of further downstream value addition. If you look at the other industries, everybody looks at downstream integration so that you are closer to the customer, you also get a value addition, then share the value gain. This is very natural in every other industry. People do look for downward integration. But when it comes to textile in India, this 35 to 40%, we are actually losing out opportunity in terms of value addition. So the next question is why? Why is this disconnect? So why are we not able to leverage garmenting industry to the scale like textile in India? When we ask this question, we have asked this question to 45 to 50 leading industries across India. The generic explanations which we get, the production cost, people do compare the production cost and then make a claim, the production cost in India is not that great, it's not that competitive. Therefore, scaling up garmenting is always a challenge. The second explanation that you get, thanks to Mr. Trump and other initiatives, the trade policies. With such a volatile trade policies, we don't know how the future is going to look like. Anyway, these trade policies are recent phenomena, but even if you look at over a longer period, India is not that great when it comes to garmentings. So one explanation can be the trade and other related policies. The third, people always look at garmenting as a very labor intensive operations, right? This is an industry where very minimal automation, I would say, is explored. Okay, people are still dependent on good amount of labor force, and we all know controlling such complicated labor intensive operations in India with political policies around is not that great encouraging industry to explore. If you also look at this reflects the investments which comes into India. If you look at, this is one industry which attracts least investments. This is one industry which attracts least investments. Let's look at one by one. Is production cost a real hindrance? These are all some numbers. Okay, India is almost 16 billion US dollar, the garment apparel exports. If you compare it to China, China is 10 times bigger than India. And even if countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh, they are 3 to 4 times bigger than India. And if you look at Bangladesh and Vietnam, they don't have such a strong raw material supply base that as India has. We are the largest producer of fabric and we are the largest producer of cotton. Despite having that, our garment exports is insignificant. And if you look at the cost structure of these countries, yes, Bangladesh seems to be competitive when it comes to labor cost. But if you look at the other countries, in fact, China, their operating cost is much higher than India. So operating cost cannot be the reason why garmenting in India is not flourishing. Let's look at the next one, the trade policies. China enjoys about 30% of total apparel exports, whereas India it's about 3%. Here also they are 10 times bigger than India. If you take broad two markets, Europe market and US market, which constitutes 70-80% of total apparel consumption, the policies across these countries, it's not that discouraging to India, I would say. This is the prevailing policy. Whatever that reverse tariff deployed by Trump got reversed in February 2006. So post February 26, this is the story. If you see, it's almost like a level playing ground. Okay, it's not that China has got distinct advantage over India to justify 10 times the share as compared to India. So duty structure cannot be a single reason which justifies our government performance. Let's look at the third part, the labor intensive operations part. Let's look at the other industries in India which are equally labor sensitive or labor intensive, but still they are flourishing. Take anything. You take automobile, electronics, construction. Construction is as labor intensive as that of textile. So labor intensive operation cannot be a reason again then. So let's understand what exactly is the reason which is holding Indian garmenting companies in expanding to the next level. This is the reason, according to our research, the returns that you get when you integrate garment, the extra EBITDA that you get, it doesn't justify the efforts that I need to put in. If I sell as a fabric, the EBITDA ranges typically between 8 to 13%. The incremental EBITDA that you get when you downward integrate the garmenting is marginally high, very high. Because of all this complexity that we spoke, it's a labor intensive setup, higher working capital requirements, huge dependent on the fabric supplier, because you as a standalone garmenting, most of your operation is decided and dictated by the fabric suppliers. And you need accurate execution capabilities in garmenting. All this discourages garmenting. Let's understand, when a garmenting company makes more money, let's start from something very fundamental. If you look at, most of the garmenting companies are organized into groups of lines. You have dedicated lines for making shirts, t-shirts, jackets, etc. Because each product requires a different skill set. You cannot swap a particular product across lines. When you try to do that, your efficiency goes for a toss. So respecting this subgroup classification is extremely critical to drive higher efficiencies. If you look at garmenting industry, 60 to 70% of their cost is input cost. It goes as raw material or it goes as packing material. So the extent of value addition by the garmenter is limited to only 30%. In order to get the profit, what I target or what I plan, I need to manage this 30% value addition very effectively, right? If for that means that I need to have very high operating efficiencies, you will get operating efficiencies at a higher level only when you run the same style continuously in those dedicated lines without any interference. Okay, that's one of the significant need of all garmenting industry. I have set up my lines for these products. Yes, there are continuous inflow of orders. If I can manage my procurement and planning in such a manner, if I run these lines uninterrupted, I get higher efficiencies with very lower inventory in my central warehouse. Most of these garmenting companies are make-to-order companies. I get an order, I produce and I ship. But unfortunately, today, if you go and see those garmenting companies, they will have 30 to 45 days of finished goods inventory. Every garmenting companies, most of the garmenting companies, I would say. Then it leads to on-time high to your end customer also. When these three necessary conditions are met, garmenting company make more money. This is the idealistic scenario. Let's understand what exactly happens today in the garmenting shop floor. Yes, I have dedicated lines because the skills required are very different as we discussed. If you look at one of the major challenge is getting that full kit. I'm sure most of the garmenting people here will understand the word full kit. Full kit means you need the cut panel, you need the approvals, and you also need the trims and embellishments to start the line. Getting these full kit in front of each of these category is equally important. When typically, if you look at the garmenters, every garmenting companies makes weekly plan, monthly plan. And if you ask them whether you are able to execute that plan as per the sequence in which you have envisaged, the answer is no. If I don't have, let's say, a t-shirt material, I can't run that line empty because some of the garmenting operation is also tied to their revenues. The labor will not come tomorrow. So they take the jacket line knowing well it will run at a lower efficiency. I may also run into quality risk, but I can't run the line empty. That's a bigger damage. People do spread the styles across lines, or they take one order. If I had full kit on as per the timeline, I could have run it in one line. I tried to run it in 2 lines or 3 lines just to catch up the delivery pressure. This is the reality, right? Most of the garmenting companies, if you really see what is the plan that they make and how much plan that they are able to execute exactly as per that monthly plan, it's only 20%. The research says 80% of the time I am forced to do shuffling of my plan to run the line. So the next question is why? There is a fabric player, we are placing the order. Are we not giving the adequate time to the fabric suppliers? Why? Why it is operated like this? It is because now these two companies are looked at in isolation. I look at fabric as one entity. Their game stops when they ship out the material. Okay? They wanted to optimize their profits as a standalone entity, fabric mill. Same is true for garmenting and of course the customer. Today the link is getting operated in an isolated manner to maximize profit in every link. Let's understand the impact of this local optimization. Okay? Both the mill and garment, they try to maximize their profits. Therefore, they are forced to run in silos. Whenever they try to run in silos, the customer deliveries of garment gets impacted because the batching consideration of mill is very different than the sequencing requirement of garmenting plant. Garmenting plant need the same style getting fed one behind the other. But whereas the batching consideration of a dyeing plant is very different. They try to group the same shades, make bigger batches. Only when they dye the bigger batches, the shade continuity, quality risk, there are 1,000 justification which comes in the way. Therefore, it creates this distortion. Because of this, the garmenting is less profitable. And the fabric players are now forced to, since there is an unutilized capacity, Even an integrated plant, our experience shows that even an integrated plant is forced to look out fabric market to sell fabric because they are not able to generate that much amount of garmenting demand. People, if you see those integrated plant, people sell yarn and people sell fabric, people also sell garment. This is how the integrated setup in India is organized. Even though there is a big pie out there to capture the garmenting as a whole, people do explore this intermediary product sale is because of they are not able to get that kind of volume from the garmenting brands. So the next question is, what to change? If I try to operate it like this, each party try to optimize their own entity, but at the end of the day, everybody loses. So how to change this? What we propose, not that every company has to look for a downward integration. Then it is limited to only few textile majors, right? Even if you're a small textile player, the textile player has to take this lead in terms of creating this ecosystem by adopting garmenting companies. What do I mean by adoption? It is an integrated ecosystem that we are looking at. And this is the missing stitch that we are talking about. Today, you are looking at this as an independent entity. You don't need to have financial muscle to buy a garmenting unit. It can be a different company, but you can still create this integrated ecosystem through this approach. What do we mean by this? It sounds like a very high-level strategy. How to get it implemented? Let's look at few aspects of this integration. The first thing that we speak about is integrated planning and scheduling. We spoke, the success of this entire garmenting line lies with the ability that I'm able to run those lines uninterrupted with the intended styles. This can happen on and only when the fabric mill, instead of start producing their own entity of big batches, they have a visibility of the fabric level of stock across garmenting lines, keep refilling them. The entire planning and scheduling of both the companies will undergo a change. The fabric mill will no more look at their fabric SOs. Today what's happening? Garmenting guys give a SO, they PO. You give a PO to the fabric mill punches an SO in their SAP system, produce fabric, then they expect you to take it. I'm sure you would have realized that even the fabric mill, which is a make-to-order company, they carry 45 to 50 days of FG inventory at their warehouse, while the garmenting lines are starving here. Do you see the paradox? At one side you are line starving, at the other side there are FG inventory produced, is because of this entity mismatch. What the entity that garmenter wants is very different than what the entity that fabric mill is producing. This is true whether you take knitted fabric, woven fabric, across industry. This is true. This also means two necessary conditions. One, as I said, the entity has to be aligned. The fabric guys should have a very good IT integration to have this visibility of the bank in front of garmenting lines on a daily basis to take scheduling decisions. This is point number one. Second, after we have established this integrated planning and scheduling, we expect the delivery reliability to go up, the lead times to come down. Is it the story? End of the story? The answer is no. We can, once we have this collaborated approach, we can play the game differently. Let me explain why. How? Today, these companies operates on make to order. I get the demand from the customer, the garmenting unit, passes the demand to the fabric mill, they supply the material and I in turn ship it. Absolutely make to order system. We have seen this, very low on-time delivery, very high lead times and mismatched inventory at your customer's place. You will also wonder, as a garmenter, customer is giving you a PO, at times, even after the material is ready, he is not picking. Have you ever encountered this? You may ask, you have given me the PO, I made the material, why are you not lifting? He will say, my inventory there, it's mismatched, something is really selling well, something is not selling well, I have inventory chock-a-block, please hold on. Whoever is working with exports, this is a very familiar story. How to change this? Instead of this disintegrator or silo approach, if we can move into this integrated ecosystem, where we can align the fabric mill with the garmenting unit, this also requires a very good collaboration from your customer. Only then you can create this supply chain reconfiguration aspect. You can identify certain products which are perennially produced across season, across year. Create that bank in consultation and collaboration with the customer and I have a clear understanding of liability sharing between fabric and garment, then the lead time is no more the end-to-end lead time. The lead time to the brand is only the garment manufacturing lead time, which is 1/3. The 2/3 of the lead time we are already cut. Does this mean that we can introduce this only for core products? The answer is no. We can do this for fashion product as well. In the article that is there in front of you, you can go through. There are implementation case studies that we have mentioned it, or you can go to our website, where even in fashion product, seasonal product, we have implemented this supply chain reconfiguration benefits, and customer has enjoyed as high as 60% increase in sales. This is the second aspect of supply chain reconfiguration. Now comes the third interesting aspect, quality integration. I am pretty sure most of the garmenting people will realize after the material is inverted, when you are cutting it on the table, when you do the cut panel inspection, you are finding defects, right? Whenever you find defects, your ability to supply in full goes for a toss. You won't be able to ship in full. If you need to ship in full, you need to depend from the fabric mill again to get the residual fabric. This is because of mismatched inspection standards. Most of the fabric mill follows point system to decide which fabric is good, which fabric is bad. It's an internationally accepted system. 24 points, okay. Anything more than 24 points, reject. Less than 24 points, okay. This 24 is just a number. It varies from customer to customer. Whereas if you look at the garmenter, he looks at every panel. For him, every panel matters. If there is a defect in the panel, I can't ship in full. This necessitates multiple inspection points. The same fabric is inspected at the fabric QC of the fabric mill. Once I invert, I also inspect the GRN, do the inward inspection, then the cut panel inspection. Where the defect gets detected, by the time I trigger the delay or the remake, it's too late. Is it the only damage? No. Fabric mill also have to take an additional setup to produce these residual quantities in small batches, right? Same way, when the residual fabric arrives, you need to take an additional setup to produce, to make that order in full. So it's an absolute lose-lose. So what we are saying, if you are looking at it as an integrated ecosystem, why this duplication of QC? Let the inspection happen at source. There are many green channel supplies which happens in automotive. Automotive doesn't inspect. They expect the quality responsibility with the tier 2 supplier. No tier 1 companies inspects the material when they get the sub-assemblies. It directly goes into the assembly line. So if you can get this done, this eliminates the redundant inspection points. This is the final point, the pricing integration. Today, these mills looks at their cost separately. Fabric selling price is arrived at fabric production cost plus my own margin. Garmenter again adds the fabric procurement price, garment conversion cost, his own margin. At the end of the day, the total cost goes high. This is where the garmenting buyer, I'm pretty sure they will tell me, the merchandisers, they will tell me, when I submit a costing for a particular garment, I get a feedback from my brand, you are too costly, your cost is too high. Either improve your operational efficiency or you reduce your sourcing cost. This leads to unhappy customer, or we are losing the share. What we are recommending is, this requires a very high level of integration. Instead of looking at it as an independent entity, look at it as total cost. Get the total margin and share that margin between these two entities. That's the highest level of integration that you can think of. Two different legal entities work in tandem, go and approach, create an entity. Legally you can't create an entity, right? These two different companies have a centralized planning team and sales team. They go and pitch the customer, get the order, execute it, and share the margin as per the pre-decided ratios. If you can do all this, that one missing stretch that I spoke about will lead to 50% potential jump in garmenting revenues in India. Thank you very much. To get this article, you can scan my barcode. Thank you.
Thank you, Senthil, for this insightful presentation. To take the topic forward, we have a panel discussion lined up. So we have Mr. Sameer Bhan, Business Head at Pratibha Syntex. We have Mr. Surya Agarwal, Managing Director at OCM Private Limited. And we have Mr. Darpan Shukla, Chief Supply Chain and Sourcing Officer at Brandix Limited. Since you are from different backgrounds, from different product lines, we would like to hear about this from your perspective as well. And to take this discussion forward, I would like to invite Mr. D.R. Karthikeyan, Associate Partner at the Vector Consulting Group.
Hello. Am I audible? So, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all of you. The last couple of days here in Bharat Tex has been truly a celebration of all the elements that makes India's textile industry one of the strongest in the world. Whether you talk about the manufacturing capability that we possess, the kind of innovation that is happening today in the industry, the ambition that the industry possesses, each and every element only reinforces the fact that India has been able to establish a really incredible textile industry. But that also raises an uncomfortable question. The question is, if we have become so strong in our textiles, why have we not been able to become equally strong in our garmenting? There are some numbers that I want to share. If we look at India as a whole, we are one of the world's largest textile manufacturers, right? But we contribute less than 4% of the total global apparel trade. And that market is almost 1.45 trillion USD today. And as we speak, it is poised to grow at almost 1.9 trillion USD in the coming decade or so. There was a survey that we conducted where we also found that 35 to 45% of the fabric that gets produced in our country gets exported in fabric form. That means it loses out on the further value addition possibilities which are there by converting them into garments, which are ultimately done in other countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, Sri Lanka and so on, which then gets exported to the consuming nations in terms of finished garments. So the question is, which is also the topic of today's discussion, is that why Indian fabric players are struggling to integrate into garmenting and what it will take to succeed. Is it something to do with their business model, the economics, the kind of capabilities that they possess? I know the answers to these questions are not simple. That is why we have today with us very distinguished leaders from the industry who can view this challenge from very different vantage points. So without spending any more time, I would like to dive right into the discussion. So the first thing, Mr. Agarwal, I would like to start with you. India has seen a wonderful wave of startups in the last few years, right? There have been startups in technology, consumer brands, a lot of industries, fintech for that matter. But when we look at garmenting, we have not seen such kind of an entrepreneurial setup which has come up in a big way. Why do you think that is? Would you want to share your views?
I think it's like Senthil said, the industry is like very fragmented. That's one thing, and also like the entrepreneurs are automatically attracted to where the fundraising is happening, right? So like how much fundraising is happening in textiles, or how much fundraising is available to an entrepreneur who says that I want to do a startup in textiles or in manufacturing. So the only place like where I see as an entrepreneur that if I was gonna do a startup, then I would do a startup in like how either IoT plays a role in manufacturing or how AI plays a role in manufacturing. But it's not going to be something about supply chain optimization in manufacturing, because that's not where I can easily raise money as an entrepreneur. And I think it's a pretty simple answer related to where an entrepreneur can raise money, number one. Number two, like where do they have exposure? Like we see a lot of consumer-centric startups because those are problems that entrepreneurs live through. If you like live through a problem, then you think about solving it. But the people who are living through these problems that we are discussing here are people who are already steeped deep into the industry. Like whether it is like garmenting, fabric manufacturing or whatever, they're like steeped deep into the textile industry, and then they have like a high level perspective to actually see the problem. Because I guarantee you, like anyone who joins the company, for the first 5 years, the kind of perspective that they are like, you know, entitled to in their professional capacity, they're not going to be able to see the problem the way Senthil is seeing the problem. So how are they going to like even make a pitch to solve that problem? If they can't make a pitch to solve that problem, then they can't raise money for it.
That's a very interesting point. In continuation to that, Mr. Bhan, Pratibha is one of the few companies which has the integrated operations, right? And you being part of it, you would have seen that problem the way Mr. Agarwal is saying. Do you find that there is a problem in the way we are able to grow our garmenting?
So if I have to look at it, a problem where we find it as a opportunity, being vertical, we are able to deliver what the customer needs. Obviously, there's a huge challenge because how we look at it and what Senthil has presented very beautifully, the whole business is running in silos. The garment is a very asset-light business, very fast-paced, very fashion-oriented, whereas the fabric is very, very heavy asset-based, huge lead times, long inventory. So the marriage is not happening perfectly. That is the biggest challenge, and that is where the rest of the world is leading the way. They have their vertical operation. Most of the bigger operations you see, they have that opportunity. They can create that kind of product. They can innovate the product. Right now, we're just talking about basic jerseys and basic T-shirts and polos. World has gone beyond that. So that is where we need to change our mindset. There's a big cultural difference between a garment manufacturing guy and a mill. So that is what we need to change, and we need to integrate. That was a very interesting point which Senthil said.
But India, with already a big asset in terms of a textile industry, why do you think we have not been able to leverage that by taking it to the garmenting?
So if I look at it, a classic example in India is Tirupur, where everybody is working together in tandem. And somehow if you look at it, wovens, there's not a single example where you can go to a city where you can collaborate together. It's not there right now. We need to work towards that. And I think a very good initiative in that direction is PM Mitra. Everything is coming in one roof. You don't have a logistics cost. You don't need to go many places. I think that is a good move, which I think we can take beyond to the next level.
Okay. Mr. Shukla, Sri Lanka has been an example of a country where some really big garmenting ecosystems have been created, even though they don't have the same base of raw material or the textile backup the way India has. How do you think that has happened? What has helped them in achieving that?
So I think a lot to do with the history and how it has developed, and I think not only in Sri Lanka, if you look at, so we will have to first understand that a raw material textile manufacturing has a different processing or manufacturing fundamentals versus the garments, which is the apparel manufacturing, right? Apparel manufacturing is very highly labor oriented. So that is now, of course, there has been some improvements in terms of the automation and all of that, but still it involves a very high labor ratio from an output perspective or from a sale perspective versus the textile manufacturing, right? Textile manufacturing has, they call it in the industry, it's an art and a science mixed together. So that has a different thing that also comes from historical different backgrounds. A lot has to do with those pockets of different, let's say even in India, whether we call it Tirupur, whether we call it Gujarat, or whether we call it in North, it has been historically seen that way. That is how it has happened, right? Brands also had to play quite a major role in terms of how they did. So specifically in Sri Lanka, it was when it started that quite a lot of couple of brands who took a very deep interest in developing it from a grassroots level, from basic concepts and all that. So similar it is to Bangladesh also, right? It's a labor availability also plays a very key role from a population perspective. But I think from a garment to textile, machinery-led fundamental versus a labor-led fundamental is what I see as the major this thing, because it involves quite a lot. Now, back in earlier days to now, the requirements on regulatory stuff and on compliance and all that has become even more stringent, which requires quite a lot of persistent efforts to reach to that level. But having said that, it's not a potential which cannot be grown. And if a proper mechanism of a proper path which can be created, it can definitely be taken on and integrate with the textiles to adding value chain to the apparel supply chain.
Okay, just continuing to that point, because you talked about how brands took an interest, maybe a couple of big brands who took an interest and they helped grow that. Mr. Agarwal, if you can just help me in expanding that point by giving your opinion. can't Indian fabric players play a similar role in associating with these brands and trying to take leverage in growing our garmenting industry? Do you think that there is a role that the fabric players can play in that?
See, I think that like in terms of the problem and solution, like both the people on my thank you. So I think both people like articulated the problem pretty clearly. Like for me, like I see the problem and solution pretty simply. Okay, like I just see it as people are making a localized sale. So like whether it's the fabric manufacturer, whether it's the garment manufacturer or anybody, they're all only thinking about making a localized sale. So they're only thinking about making a sale to the next person in the supply chain. Like the way that I approach it at OCM, right, is that basically I think about it in a way that how is this ultimately contributing towards the world of fashion that the end consumer is living in? Like if I'm clear about how my factory's capabilities can contribute to the world of fashion which the end consumer is living in, then I will automatically design and sell fabrics or even like components inside my own factory that are all ultimately contributing to a growing style for the end consumer. Right? Like for example, OCM is historically like a suiting and jacketing company, but I don't identify as a suiting and jacketing company in how I talk to my people. I say that we're a wool company because I think about how do I use my factory to contribute to how the consumer is looking to use wool. And I'm designing my fabrics accordingly. And then I am approaching my customers, like who are like garment manufacturers or brands, saying that you can use this for these styles. And then automatically what I'm doing is that I'm basically optimizing my supply chain even without even without this like highly integrated ecosystem, just because I'm thinking of what the garment manufacturer needs to do also. Right? Like I'm thinking about ultimately the garment manufacturer will only be able to like buy from me if he's able to sell well to the brand. And if I don't care about that, then I am living in a disjointed society, which like India is very happy to do. You can see it at the traffic intersection. Right? So you need to extend empathy to external stakeholders. And if you don't have the capability to like extend empathy to external stakeholders, I don't think that then you like deserve to sit in like leadership positions of like MD, CEO and all of that, right? And I think that is also a problem in the textile industry where basically we have a lot of like family-owned businesses, and like the family-owned businesses they're like running with like a babu mentality, like like I am the fucking king, like I'm like sitting here as the king, like I'm not sitting here to do the best job for my company, even if it means like disagreeing with a certain like legacy style of working. So I think it's about like think of fiber to fashion. Don't think that I'm trying to make a sale to the next guy. I'm trying to make a sale to the end consumer so that I can place myself and the people who associate with me, right? Like my suppliers and my customers, I am placing them into a higher category in the global supply chain of fashion rather than I am just making a sale to the next guy. And if you approach it like that, I think automatically you will end up with this integrated system that Senthil is like envisioning.
Yeah, I think the very important point that you mentioned is that we should not be working towards looking at silos, that right, selling to the next customer. In fact, we should be looking at the final customer and then integrating our supply chain basis that. I believe Mr. Band, Pratibha recently went into a partnership with Holotex, right? It has a design center in Spain and also has manufacturing facilities in Morocco. So you want to share something on that experience, how that you feel will be helping you, and there is something that for us to learn to develop such kind of ecosystems in India as well?
Yeah, I think first of all, the most interesting thing which happened with us is everybody asked us, why are you going to Morocco? And everybody feels that it is a cheaper manufacturing location. And if you look at most of the business companies in India, either they are going east, I would say Bangladesh or Jordan, to get a lower cost and entice their customer with better prices. But we have a different thought process, and as Mr. Agrawal said, we have to find and give solution to the customer for the product they want, because customer doesn't know what they want. You have to give them some opportunities to explore the product. That is where Morocco and Barcelona came into the picture, where we're giving a very holistic solution to the customer, what actually customer needs. That is what we are trying to build in. And then the most important thing is, sitting in Barcelona, we are sitting with the customers. We understand what customer need, the speed they need, the agility, and innovation in the product. So we are not gone for the cost. We are there to increase the speed. Right now, the challenge, why other question which you started with, the why industry is facing, because the lead times what we are giving in India, nobody gives that. Every customer wants faster delivery. That is where we've gone there to learn that knack. We want to learn how we want to give faster delivery to customer, how we can turn around, and that is why customer wants. Because now sitting in Morocco, these guys are delivering in 48 hours to Spain and 72 hours in Paris by truck. And when I talk about India, we are like 25 plus days. We are manufacturing fabric for 30, 45 days, yarns. We take our old time. That's not the thing, and that is where we are in Morocco and Spain to learn that knack, and we're going to crack it for sure. Thank you.
So an important point is that customer requires today much faster deliveries, and that basically means that the entire ecosystem, right from yarn to fabric to the garmenting, has to work together very closely. Mr. Shukla, fabric and garmenting fundamentally works on very different operating philosophies, right? Senthil also touched upon it. Brandex, you have also working as an integrated unit as well. Do you think even it's possible for these two entities to come together and work like one entity in terms of their integrated systems?
Yeah, I think the larger question is not about the ownership integration of within the group available companies or outside the group available companies, because even though the largest vertical companies across the world, there'll be a certain element of the demand which they will have to buy from outside, because none of the whole complexities and all SKUs are possible to be done in a one textile mill or in a one fabric mill. So that is a much use. So there is element of buying it from outside. Question is not about a ownership integration. The question is about more of information integration within the vertical companies, or I would say rather across the other group companies also outside the group, right? And information being, which I think in the presentation was also mentioned, that it requires a collaboration not only between the apparel manufacturing or a textile production, it requires basically a much larger information integration directly from the brands, right? Because the demand is created from the brands, and how it goes down the downstream supply chain to supply it upstream has to be integrated, whether it is a seasonal demand, it's a color demand, whether it is volumes, whether it is SKU, whether it is anything else, that needs that integration. In my view, only ownership integration is not going to sort out everything, which normally has been the legacy view, because we work, or a lot of other companies also work not only from within their own group companies, they work with outside also. So there is a lot of partnership which can be created and collaboration which can be created to have a reliable and predictable supply chain. Your point is right, which was mentioned earlier, that lead times definitely is a challenge. So agility plays definitely a very important role. The SKUs, if you look at a decade or 15, 20 years back, 2 decades back to now, the SKUs have broken down. So the color-wise quantities have become shorter, orders are more complex, the demand is generated more closer to where it needs to be sold on a seasonality basis. The peaks and valleys are also high. So all of these complexities, only ownership integration between a fabric or a garment manufacturing is not an answer. It's an integration of each and every element of information flow, how it goes downstream and upstream to supply, is my view.
Okay. But I believe this kind of integration still, while it may be easier in terms of companies which has an integrated setup, they may be functioning differently, but we can have some amount of integration. But what about a country like India, where there are so much fragmented garmenting players and few fabric manufacturers, right? So Mr. Agarwal, what is the kind of role that the fabric manufacturer has to take to bring about this kind of integration? Because that, I believe, if you have a setup integrated, maybe you can do it, but how to manage where there is such a big fragmentation?
So like I said, basically it's about having fiber to fashion clarity. Thank you. It's like about having fiber to fashion clarity. So if I'm clear about what what like aspects of fashion am I contributing to, I can automatically, basically, I'm creating fabrics for dedicated styles. And that's what like was there in Senthil's presentation also, was that you have these different garmenting lines. And each garmenting line should ideally be for, like, it should be a style dedicated line. So unless you are clear as a fabric manufacturer that which style are you ultimately contributing to, how are you going to feed a style dedicated line? So I would say that the one of the early steps is that, based on what your technical competency is as a fabric manufacturer, and like Mr. Shukla said, like, you can be an integrated plant, you can be anything, but ultimately because of how much variance there is in the fashion SKUs, the fabric mill is never going to produce all the SKUs that the garment needs. And you definitely shouldn't be aspiring to do that either. Like, it's not like it's going to be like a massive capital thing. But if you're just, even if you don't have any capital and you're just clear about which styles do I contribute to as with my current fabric manufacturing capabilities, then automatically the fabric that I'm producing will feed the style dedicated lines that like Senthil was envisioning in his presentation. And that's how I'm approaching it as well, like at OCM. Like, we don't have like apparel or anything, but whatever new markets that I'm developing, I'm very style dedicated to overshirts and overcoats. So like I want to like automatically, like my SKUs right down to the component dyeing level are all optimized for that. And if I keep intermediary stock, which helps in lead times ultimately, that intermediary stock is also designed in a way, like whether that intermediary stock is yarn or whether that intermediary stock is like dyed components, those are all feeding into the same set of styles, right? It has a versatility in the sense, it has a versatility. So based on what demand is being generated by the end consumer, and then that demand is being passed on to my garment partner, that demand is like coming back towards me, and I'm not starting from scratch my manufacturing process. I'm starting from the intermediary stock stage. So then my end consumer ultimately gets his demand fulfilled faster. But unless I'm thinking all the way till the end as a fabric manufacturer at the designing stage, it's not gonna work according to me. Like I think the clearest thing, the one thing that will help people the most, like it'll help like our country the most, is if like all the fabric manufacturers are clear about what style are they contributing to, and like which pieces of fashion are you contributing to. If you are clear about that, then automatically you'll optimize your designing and your like intermediary stock in a way where you can then partner with your garmenting guy to be like, okay, let's create these style dedicated lines, and I will like supply you your style dedicated lines. And yeah, like that's how I'm approaching it, like as a new person in this industry.
Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing. Your answer to your question is exposure of a downstream supply chain to a upstream supply chain is the most important element, which I think in terms of how textile raw material can integrate better or can supply better solutions to them. That is again coming out of silos and looking at, okay, my ring fence boundary is only textile manufacturing. I receive a PO, I have a delivery date and a quality and other parameters to be met, and after that I said. But I think the more the raw material suppliers are exposed with the brands upstream on the apparel side of it, not only they will understand the exposure and the requirements of that, but more importantly how the solutions needs to be built around to meet that more proactively. So it's not that only the demand, when it comes, I have to just meet the demand. So exposure to upstream supply chain up to the brand level is the most important point to understand and then provide solutions.
Okay. Mr. Band, you have anything to add to it in terms of the kind of integration that both of them spoke about?
No, I think it's very important, as Mr. Agarwal said. I think him approaching the seasons and the customers, what is the need of the hour, what customer is expecting, that is very important. And then he can go with the solutions, because we are vertical integrated. We know what we need to innovate. We are working ahead of the season. We are working from the fiber level to the garment. That kind of integration changes the whole game. And then you're always ahead of the seasons. You are presenting good collection, whether be as an integrated supplier or an independent mill. And they work collaboratively. I think that is a win-win situation.
Mr. Shukla, actually, Brandex already operates like an integrated unit, even in India, right? BISC is there. Do you want to share the experience of how it is operating and the kind of benefits that you all get?
I don't know the benefits, that only customers can tell, but I can expand on the kind of. So our setup in India was designed in such a way that it was designed to be a self-integrated plug-and-play infrastructure park, which should have ideally from fiber to store concept was the concept what we came up with. In fact, PM Mitra scheme is also similar to what we do and inspired by our park. So that element of looking at the overall chain, that if you have a place, if you have an entity from where you have fabric onwards or yarn onwards, everything available in that whole ecosystem, it becomes quite easy to find solutions what the customers are looking for. So it's a one-stop shop instead of going to multiple raw material suppliers, multiple garment suppliers, and then trying to reach out to and trim suppliers, embellishments, all the complexities we are involved with. So it was designed to that objective of one-stop shop, right? Of course, the advantages are immense from agility perspective, from scale, and plug and play infrastructure plays an important role. So all those are elements, obviously, which are part of that. You don't have to travel to any other location, or the raw material doesn't have to travel. Everything is within the apparel city, and it kills the time which normally spends on non-value added activities.
Mr. Agarwal, you want to add anything on that front?
No, I think what he said about like upstream exposure is like the main thing. And maybe like, I think that maybe my perspective has like matured earlier because I got that exposure earlier. But yeah, like I think if people have that if people get that exposure early and more people get it, then I think automatically like the empathy towards how we can optimize the overall chain can come in. But it also requires a mindset that like, I think Senthil told me privately, like it's greed for success versus fear of failure. And like my concept for it is different. Like I have the same thing, but like my words for it is different. It's like, do you operate from a scarcity mindset or do you operate from an abundance mindset? So if you operate from a scarcity mindset, you're always like, ki mera kya. But if you're like operating from a scarcity, if you're operating from an abundance mindset, then you try to create a win-win for everyone. And if you try to work towards a win-win for everyone, I think then you can create these kind of integrated systems.
That's a great one. So we are towards the end of the discussion right now. So we discussed about some of the challenges that are currently we are facing as an industry, both textile and garmenting together, and some ideas of how we can actually improve by working as an integrated system. But I would like to end on an optimistic note. So I would request if each one of you can complete the sentence that I would give you. So India has everything it takes to become a global garmenting powerhouse, provided we are able to. Maybe Mr. Ban, you can start first.
I think provided we are able to look at it as a more strategic way and collaborate together with brands to offer some holistic solutions.
Okay. Mr. Agarwal?
Like provided we are able to I think just extend empathy, like what I've been talking about towards external stakeholders.
Okay. Mr. Shukla.
You mentioned about powerhouse. So powerhouse translated to the vision of textile industry in India has already been set by 2030. They want to be a $300 billion as an overall target which has been set up. So that's powerhouse translated to numbers and a vision. I think the answer was there in your presentation also, that India's raw material strength from cotton fiber onwards and other materials, leading to the raw material of fabric, leading to the garments, and ultimately the retail as an export oriented I'm not talking about the domestic market, which is also huge. But value addition, instead of sending yarn to overseas and they value adding, instead of fabric to overseas, other destination, that value adding, if 50% of this yarn which we export is value added up to garments in India, and 50% of what textiles or fabric which is exported to all the destinations, only 50% is converted to the end garment, which is apparel as export. 50% of that $300 billion vision can be met in less than 2 years.
Great. So on that hopeful note, I would like to thank each of our panelists here, and also a thank you for all of you for being such an engaged audience. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of Bharat Tex.
I'm leaving tomorrow. Sorry? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.